Hey guys, and welcome back to another Ultra Red Monotype challenge. Last time we saw how Ice fared against this game. If you haven't seen it, then make sure to go check it out after this video. Today though, we're going to find out, can you beat Pokemon Ultra Red using only Steel types? Generally speaking, Steel types are seen as one of the better types out there. They're really good defensively with resistances to common types such as Ice, Normal, Flying and Dragon to name just a few. Steel types are decently powerful on the offensive side as well, being super effective against Ice, Rock and Fairy for example. Now the rules in this series have been gone over so many times, so I'm not going to bore you with them this time. You know the drill, I can only use Steel types in battle, HM users are allowed, and no items in battle, yada yada yada. Before we get started though, shout out goes to these people who found the Dabbing Delibird in the last video. He's in this one as well, unless I forget, so comment down below the timestamp if you see him and you might get featured in the next one. Remember though, I get hundreds of comments like this, so if you don't get picked this time, there's always next time. With all that said and done, let's get this show on the road. I start the game picking the female character and call her Junko. As always, comment down below if you get the reference. I name my rival Zwigo because I'm a really nice guy and I love giving smaller channel shoutouts. I decide to choose Fertile so that Zwigo will use the Fire type starter, and after naming it Subscribe, which you should all do, I catch my first team member. My first Steel type can actually be caught right here on Route 1. In this case it's the Steel type variant of Cyndaquil known as Cindersteam. It seems to have good all round stats with a focus on defense. This will do nicely for the first gym. Before taking him on though, I beat Zwigo in an easy fight, and evolved Cindersteam into a Quasheen. That is a really difficult name for me to say. Reminds me of Quiche. Now we've evolved though, I take on Brock, and this fight was about as easy as you would expect. Crustite goes down in one Metal Claw, and we even get the attack boost, and although we do get paralysed, Carbot goes down in 2 hits. Moss Eater goes down in a single Metal Claw as well, and his final Pokemon is Isocoon, which is 4 times weak to Steel. He decides to go for Amnesia, so we just take it out with 1 hit, and easily win ourselves the first badge. While travelling through Mount Moon, I decide it's time to catch some more team members, the first of which is a Cedapole, which is actually at the moment not a Steel type, it's just pure Rock, but once it evolves it can become part Steel. I evolve into Spikeoon, and catch a second team member, that being a Lunark, which is a Psychic Steel type. This thing's going to be really useful as it has the ability Levitate, which means that ground types are just going to do no damage to us whatsoever. Before moving on though, I evolve Spikeoon once again. This should be a good counter for fire types. Also, I picked the Helix fossil, but I can't seem to remember why. Why don't you try and remind me in the comments? And in 1 Rock Blast, so does Stalagmite, so does Burnosaur, and his last push. I actually lost a few times to Misty, so I decided to take a different approach. I travelled just next to Vermilion City, and catch myself a Rustiage. This is a grass Steel type version of Kecleon, so I definitely want this on the team. In particular, it's going to be really useful against Misty, and sure enough, this fight was really easy. Fomal's up first and goes down to a single Razor Leaf, and next up is Tartler. I switch in Lunark because we have the super effective Confusion, which does a huge chunk of her health, and after healing with an Oran Berry, we can just take a second Aqua Jet, and finish it off with 1 more. Her last 2 Pokemon just get completely destroyed by Rustiage. Goldtide's 4 times weak to Razor Leaf, so easily goes down in 1 hit, and her last Pokemon Syrinx does basically no damage with a Water Pulse and goes down to 1 Razor Leaf as well. That was a pretty convincing win. Lieutenant Surge wasn't that much more difficult either. Elix is up first, so I start with Rustiage once again, and after easily taking a Thunderfang, this thing is also weak to Rock, so after getting paralysed by a Spark, I hit 1 more Rock Blast for an easy KO. Next up is Moroff, which is part grass, so I just swap into Rustiage and hit a few digs, which does bring it down to red health, but of course he heals with a super potion, so we can just hit 1 more dig, and we actually get a critical hit as well, which brings it back down to red health, before we finally get taken out by a Volt Tackle. I send in Quasheen, who takes a Volt Tackle like a champ, and from there we can just take it out with a Bite. Now we're just down to his final Pokemon Fearolt, so I swap back into Dustsharp. He just goes for charge instead of attacking, so I can hit another Rock Blast, and we even get a critical hit, which brings it all the way down to red health before finally stopping. He doesn't heal up and instead just goes for a Shockwave, which we somehow survive with just 1 HP, and we would have been able to take it out, but of course we get fully paralysed. This means we do go down to 1 more Shockwave, so I just swap Quasheen back in, and once again just clean up with a Bite. Fearolt goes down and that's 3 badges already. Before facing the 4th gym, I actually catch a new team member, that being a Steeloo. This is absolutely adorable. It's a pure steel type Wooloo. I just couldn't resist having this on the team. I train up some levels and even evolve it in the process, but Titanial isn't the only new evolution we get, as we even evolve Quasheen into a Typhactory. Kind of a weird design this one, but I kinda dig it. With our newly buffed up team, I take on the 4th gym leader Erica, and again this wasn't a massively difficult fight. First up is Phonomoth, who just keeps going for weak air cutters, so we can eventually take it out with a couple of Metal Claws, and Lattice up next. Again I go for a Metal Claw for a good amount of damage, as she hits a weak Mud Bomb but does get the accuracy drop, which means we do miss our next move. We survive another Mud Bomb though, and we don't miss the next Metal Claw, so it goes down, and Chorus is up next. Even with our boosted attack, Metal Claw does hardly any damage, and we get taken out by a Leech Life. I send in Dust Sharp and just go for a Rock Blast, but unfortunately we only hit twice, as she puts a Leech Seed on us. We do take it out the next turn though, as we hit more than twice, and Marshwine is up next. I switch in our new Titanial, and go for the Jump Kick, which to be honest doesn't do as much as I was expecting it to. We get hit by another Leech Seed as well, which isn't ideal, so unfortunately we can't take it out before we go down ourselves, but we're at the point where I can just switch in Lunark, and finish it off with a Confusion. Erica's final Pokemon is a Royal Lotus, but this thing is part Fairy, which means it's weak to Steel. I go straight for the Flash Cannon, which does a huge amount of damage, and she just goes for a weak Giga Drain, so one more Flash Cannon takes it out, and that's half the badges earned already. We defeat Giovanni and Swiggo in 2 easy fights, and before doing anything else, I catch a new Pokemon. I know what you're thinking, this thing isn't a Steel type, and you'd be correct, it's a Fire Fairy type, but just west of Fuchsia City you can actually trade it for this. Mekins is a pure Steel type version of Ekans, but once it evolves it actually becomes part Dragon, which is definitely something I'm interested in. I do some training and take on the 5th gym leader Koga, and as always this is a double battle. He starts off with Mediclops and Noxiora, so I lead off with Lunark and Dust Sharp, and focus my attention on the Noxiora, taking it out in 2 hits. Taintuck comes out next, as I hit a Psycho Cut on the Mediclops for decent-ish damage. I go for a Psychic with Lunark on the Taintuck, which brings it well into KO range, as he just goes for Acid Armor. This does mean though that he actually survives the Psycho Cut from Dust Sharp, as Mediclops takes out Lunark. I send in Rustyage as I have the super effective Dig, as Taintuck gets a critical hit Shadow Sneak, but it really doesn't do that much. I then get some decent damage in on Mediclops with another Psycho Cut, and thankfully next turn the Dig is just enough to finish off Taintuck. Nefario comes out next, as I hit one more Psycho Cut on the Mediclops, bringing it down to KO range as he just goes for Spikes. Dust Sharp does get absolutely destroyed by a Sky Uppercut though, so I send in Titanial, as I go for an Iron Head on the Nefario and we get a critical hit as well, which does some really good damage. Thankfully Nefario misses the Sky Uppercut, which means that Titanial can finish off the Mediclops with an Iron Head, and Rustyage can finish off Nefario as Playgron comes out next. We're now down to his final Pokemon as Glimpel comes out, and unfortunately takes out Rustyage with a single X-Scissor. I send in Destroyer, and lower their attack with Intimidate, as Titanial goes for a Zen Headbutt, which does about half to the Playgron. We just get hit by a weak Air Cutter though, which does nothing to either of my Pokemon, and Destroyer can actually take out Playgron thanks to a critical hit Dragon Tail. I forgot to mention by the way, yes I will be calling this thing Destroyer. Glimpel goes for the
cheese
strats, and takes out Titanial with a single Guillotine. That was really cheap. I send in Typhactory, and he tries to go for it again but thankfully misses this time, as I paralyze it with a Glare. Now I can just slowly chip away at its health, as he does go for a full heal, but after a critical hit Flash Cannon he's actually in really rough shape. He does of course fully heal with a Hyper Potion, but we paralyze it once again, and on what was his last chance to attack, he just goes for another full heal, so one more Dragon Tail followed by another Flash Cannon are all we need to secure the 5th badge. I guess that's the perk of being immune to poison. Before moving on, I actually catch another Pokemon, that being the Steel Dark type Motorava. I won't be using this just yet, but for now it's sharp as this thing is our best answer to fire types, and go for a Rock Blast as he goes for a Smoke Screen. We don't miss, but we only hit twice and it doesn't really do that much, and after taking a Flamethrower, another Flamethrower, but apparently not, so I just send in Destroyer, and finish off with a priority Dragon Tail. Volcasaur's up next, so I swap into Lunark, and we have the super effective powers for some reason, so one more takes it out, and next up is Stalacton. I switch in Rustyage as we have the super effective Iron Head, which predictably is a one-hit KO, and we're down to his final Pokemon, Talamence. I switch in Titanial as we have the Wild Charge, which does great damage, again it's a 2-hit KO, or at least it would have been, but he actually goes for Feather Dance. This means that he just survives the second wild charge, but he just goes for a weak headbutt. So as always, Giovanni was a complete pushover, nothing to see here. So let's move on to the 6th gym leader, Sabrina. This was another relatively easy fight, as Steel resists Psychic. Cloystars at first and takes huge damage from our Flash Cannon, and in return Moonblast does hardly anything, so even with her healing with a Citrus Berry, one more takes it out, maybe thanks to that critical hit, I'm not sure. Zenchamp is up next, so I swap into Lunark, and we have Psychic, which does about half of its health, as she just goes for Bulk Up. I was sure that one more would take it out, but she actually just hangs on, and goes for a Brick Break for good damage. Not only that, she fully heals with a Hyper Potion, and while one more Psychic does do decent damage, she actually makes a clever play here and swaps into a Doris. This thing resists Psychic, and as you can see, it hardly does anything, and I was going to go for a Power Gem, but we actually get outsped, and just finished off by a Water Pulse. I send in Destroyer though, who's faster, and Bite almost takes it out, and we get a flinch as well. This means that one more Bite's all we need for the knockout, and now Zenchamp comes back out. I swap back into TIE Factory and go for the Flash Cannon, which is going to be enough for a 2-hit KO, and once again he shows off his amazing defensive prowess as he survives a Brick Break. Unfortunately though, she does fully heal once again, so we're only able to hit 2 more Flash Cannons before we get taken out by another Brick Break. I send in Titanial next, and just go for the Stab Iron Head, which thankfully is just enough to take it out, and Houndourami's up next. I stay in and get hit by a Psychovulse, which is a special fighting type move, but we take the hit and retaliate with a Wild Charge, which is an easy 1-hit KO. Sparkori's up next, so I swap into Rustiage, and she just goes for Future Sight, as we hit a powerful Seed Bomb. She could have gone for a powerful move here, but no, she just goes for Future Sight again. Great play there. We can take it out with one more Seed Bomb, and now we're down to a final Pokemon, Solnova. All this thing really wants to do is set up screens, and thankfully we have the move Brick Break, which actually gets rid of them. We do take quite a lot of damage from the Future Sight, but she hardly ever tries to attack us, so we can just keep going for Brick Break. Eventually she starts hitting weak Flash Cannons, but it's too little too late, as we can just take it out with a few more Brick Breaks, winning us the 6th badge in yet another easy victory. Before moving on, I do some more training and evolve some team members. Mekins evolves into a Mech Arbok, and finally gets that dragon typing I was talking about. I also decide to evolve Motorava into a Gangon, which is kind of a weird design, but I like it. I'm planning to replace a team member soon, that being Dusharp, but before we do that, he has one more very important role to play. That being the 7th gym leader, Koga. Having an answer for fire types is going to be crucial if we want to win this fight, and let me tell you, this was definitely the most difficult of all the gym fights. Explobat's up first and sets up the sun, and hits a 4-time super effective cross chop, but we actually hang on. I hit back with a Stone Edge, which is an easy 1-hit KO, and Sotillery's up next. I outspeed and hit another Stone Edge, which does great damage, and he actually misses his move. This means I can hit one more Stone Edge to finish it off. Necromantic is up next, so I hit yet another Stone Edge. That's 4 in a row now. It doesn't do quite as much as I was expecting though, and we get taken out by a Wild Charge. Dusharp's done his job though for sure, so I send in Gangon. I have the super effective Stab Crunch, but it doesn't even take it out, and we get destroyed by a Flare Blitz. Thankfully though, the move has recoil damage, so he does end up taking himself out as well. Stunt Place is up next, so I swap into Destroyer, who's going to be very useful in this fight as well, as we're not weak to fire. I go for the Dragon Tail, but unfortunately we miss, but he just goes for Leech Seed, so next turn I try again and we do actually hit this time, and it's going to be a 2-hit KO. He does hit back with a Flamethrower though, which we managed to survive, and I really didn't want this thing to heal, so instead of going for another Dragon Tail which I knew wouldn't KO, I just go for an Iron Tail to make sure he doesn't heal up. We go down to an Earth Power, so I just swap in Lunark and outspeed and KO with a Power Gem. Samurant's up next, but this thing is easy to deal with as it is weak to Psychic, so it goes down in one hit, and we're down to his final Pokemon, Faurecia. This is definitely one of his most difficult Pokemon to beat, but thankfully Lunark is just able to survive a Flamethrower and hit back with another Power Gem, which brings it all the way down to red health. He does fully heal with a Hyper Potion of course, but one more brings it down to red health, and we finally get taken out by a Stone. As always, the 8th gym leader is Giovanni, and his ground types are super effective against our steels. He starts off with Medoth and Kragler, so I lead off with Rustiage and Destroyer. I go straight for Ice Fang on the Medoth as it's 4 times super effective, but he actually just hangs on. We do get a lucky freeze, but it doesn't really matter because he has a Lumberry, and he hits back with an Aura Sphere for decent damage. Kragler then goes for an Earthquake, which does good damage to both my Pokemon, and of course, because of his ability, we miss. I'm able to take it out the next turn with a Psychic though, and Drillbrio comes out next. I land a Fire Blast on Severn, which almost takes it out from full health thanks to a critical hit, but we do get the burn. Because of this, his Drill Run hardly does any damage, and the burn damage just takes him out from there. Excali comes out next, and hits a lunge for decent damage on Lunark, as Drilgeo decides to set up a curse. This does make him slower though, which is kind of good for me, as I hit a Psych Pulse on Excali for about half its health. I go for the Fire Blast, but unfortunately we miss, and next turn one more Psycho Pulse is able to take out Excali, and next up is Kataroa. I land the Fire Blast this turn, which is super effective on Drilgeo, but unfortunately he still survives, and hits back with an Earthquake. Obviously this doesn't hit Lunark, but it's enough to finish off Typhactory, and he does some damage to his own Pokemon as well. I send in Gangon, and I completely forgot what type this thing was, as I go for Crunch, which isn't very effective. Lunark just finishes off Drilgeo though, so now it's a 2-on-1. I go for Brick Break, which does decent damage, and then Lunark can just finish it off with a Psychic from there, winning us the 8th and final gym badge. Before we can take on the Elite Four though, there's one more fight to do with Zwigo, but as always this wasn't really a problem. Telemancers is up first, so I lead with Destroyer, and straight away Thunderfang's doing okay damage, as he hits back with the weakest of returns. I don't want him to heal up, so I go for a Dragon Tail this time, which brings him down to low health, as he goes for an Earthquake. We do actually miss once, so we have to take 2 Earthquakes, but we still survive, and take it out with one more Thunderfang. Bulbasaur's up next, so I swap into Titanial, but we just get outsped and KO'd by a single Eruption, so I send in Gangon. I just go for the Earthquake as it's my strongest move against this thing, and it doesn't even do half. He just hits back with an Earth Power as well, which takes us out from full health, so I send in Destroyer once again. I can outspeed and just go for an Earthquake for an easy KO, and next up is Stalacola. I send in Rustyage as always and go for the Seed Bomb, as he just sets up with the Calm Mind. This doesn't really worry me in the slightest though, as we resist most of his moves, and we have a huge special defense stat as well. We take the Muddy Water with ease and just fire back with the second Seed Bomb for the KO, and next up is Scariados. I stay in and just go for another Brick Break, as he sets up a Spider Web which doesn't worry me at all, as I had no intention of switching out anyway. Brick Break doesn't do that much, but we do get it down low enough to where he heals, and we can hit one more before we go down to a couple of Night Slashes. I send in Typhactory and go for the Fire Blast, but unfortunately we miss, but we take the Leaf Blade with ease, and we don't miss the second one, which does some great damage. Again, his moves really aren't doing that much damage, so even though he does fully heal, a couple more hits are all we need to take it out, and next up is Bristol. He could have taken us out here, but as you've probably seen from previous runs, he just likes to set up the Swords Dance. This is fine by me as he's 4 times weak to Earthquake, so he just goes down in one hit, and now we're down to his final Pokemon, Sense Leash. I send in Destroyer and go for the Dragon Tail, which is super effective but doesn't quite take it out, as he just takes us out with a Terror Wave. Not to worry though, as we can just switch in Lunark and just finish it off with a Psychic for the win. Now we travel through Victory Road, and while training up the team, I actually came across a shiny Pokemon. Now unfortunately I can't use this on the team as it isn't a Steel type, but still I catch it anyway, no shiny left behind after all. I use my Master Ball as I really don't have any other use for this, and continue training my team. Here's a final look at our team then. Overall I'm happy with how this team has turned out. If I'm being completely honest, I think that this team is probably one of the weakest so far, but that doesn't mean there aren't some really good members here. In particular I'd have to say that Lunark and Destroyer are definitely the best members of this team. Will our team of Steel types be able to take on the Elite Four though? Well, let's find out. Lorelei's up first, and of course she uses Ice types, so technically this shouldn't be a problem. She starts off with Torchill and Eruptice as I lead with Typhactory and Lunark, and straight away Torchill goes for the Protect, which does protect him from Lunark's Psychic, but then Typhactory can just go for an Earthquake, which only Blizzmaiden goes for a Focus Blast, which Typhactory does survive, and from there Lunark just goes for a Psychic, and I don't know why I thought this thing was part poison. So it doesn't do much, but Typhactory can finish off the Blizzmaiden with a Flash Cannon. Friezl comes out next, as Torchill goes for a Weather Ball even though there's no weather, so it does hardly anything. Once again Torchill goes for the Protect, as I hit a Flash Cannon on Friezl for well over half thanks to a crit. She does hit back with a Fire Blast on Lunark, which does do some good damage, but we survive, and now our Perish Song count has gone down to 1, so we need to get out of there. I switch both of my Pokemon out, and she has the same idea as well, going into Golacia. I switch in Titanial and Gangon, but unfortunately Gangon just gets completely destroyed by a Fire Blast. I switch Lunark back in, and just finish off the Friezl with a Flash Cannon, and next up is Coolcatty. I go for Jump Kick on Golacia, but it really doesn't do as much as I was expecting, as she hits back with a Surf, which to be honest doesn't do that much to either Pokemon. I can take out the Golazia with a power gem from Lunark, but I go for the jump kick on Cool Cat as it's 4x super effective, but because of the protect we hurt ourselves. For some reason she just goes for an X special, but Cool Catty does hit with a Smart Strike, which takes out Lunark. I send in TIE Factory once again, and this turn I don't hurt myself with the jump kick, and all we need is one Flash Cannon from TIE Factory. Torchill goes down and we beat effective against basically all of his Pokemon, so no joke, we one-hit KO the first 5 members of his team, only switching into Gangon for his last Pokemon Cunnervile, who can outspeed it as this thing is really fast, and just one-hit KO with a single Earthquake. Once again there, Bruno proving that he probably shouldn't be an Elite Four member. Agatha was a little bit more challenging, but not too much. Zotom is up first, so I lead with Gangon, and go for the super effective Stab Crunch, which almost takes him out but he survives on a Sliver, and just goes for Spikes. She does fully heal up with a full restore, and this time we get a better damage roll, so Crunch is enough to KO, and next up is Claypaw. I go for another Crunch which does over half, but unfortunately she hits back with a Focus Blast, which we're 4 times weak to, so there's just no chance. I switch in Rustiage though, and this is a great example of our amazing special defense, as we easily take a Focus Blast, and just finish it off with a Seed Bomb. Pellastorm's up next, so I swap into Destroyer, and we can just outspeed and KO with a single Earthquake, as she sends out Nobodinja next. This thing is part Fairy, so basically any of my Pokemon is a good choice here. I switch in Titanial and go for the Iron Head, and we actually get a critical hit as well for an easy one-hit KO. I decide to stay in for Hypnoplasm, as I have the super effective Earthquake, which is just about a 2-hit KO, but unfortunately we get put to sleep by Hypnosis. This thing has Shadow Tag, so we can't switch out, but we do wake up relatively quickly, and we're able to take it out with one more Earthquake, and now we're just down to our final Pokemon, Snorcest. I get some insane luck here with Iron Head. We get not 1 but 2 flinches, but unfortunately she does fully heal with a rest, so I just keep chipping away with Iron Head, and we get even more flinches. A final critical hit to finish it off is the icing on the cake, and now we've just got one more member of the Elite Four to beat. That of course being Lance. Again, this is a double battle, and he starts off with Drakeperia and Flarados as usual. I start with Destroyer and Lunark, and right off the bat I go for the Earthquake, which again does nothing to Lunark, but does good damage to both Pokemon, almost taking out the Flarados from full health. Lunark can then just clean up with a Power Gem from there, and up next is Forestar. This thing does lower my attack with Intimidate, so I decide to get out of there, switching in Titanial. Drakeperia goes for a Dragon Tail for a small amount, as Forestar goes for a Bulk Up. I land a super effective Moonblast on Forestar, which is easily going to be a 2-hit KO, as I just go for a weak Iron Head on Drakeperia. One more Moonblast takes out the Forestar, and next up is Yveldo. I go for another Iron Head on Drakeperia to bring it down to about half, as I hit another Moonblast on Yveldo, which to be honest does more than I was expecting. He does hit back with an Earthquake though, which is super effective on Titanial, but doesn't do anything to Lunark once again, and he even almost takes out his own Pokemon with a critical hit. He actually uses a full restore on both Pokemon, which is kind of a pain, but to be honest it just means we get a free turn. So I focus my efforts on the Drakeperia, and we can bring it back down to red health. He just keeps hitting weak moves like Dragon Tail though, and Titanial can just finish it off with one more Iron Head. Leviatops comes out next, but Lunark just goes straight for a Moonblast, which again brings it down to red health. He does heal it straight back up with a full restore though, but again that's not going to save him. We get a better damage roll Moonblast which takes it out from full health, and his final new Pokemon Thunderius is up next. It does take hardly any damage from our Iron Head, and Yveldo hits a Brick Break on Lunark when he could have taken out Titanial. Strange choice, but I'll take it. I land another Moonblast on Yveldo, which brings it down to red health, but before Titanial can finish it off, we get taken out by an Ice Beam. I send in Destroyer once again, as Yveldo goes for a Draco Meteor, but we survive that too. He goes for what I think is his 4th full restore, but that isn't going to save him from an Outrage from Destroyer, as we get a lucky critical hit as well for a 1-hit KO. Now we just need to deal with Thunderius, who takes almost half of its health from a single Moonblast, but then takes out Lunark with the Thunder. I send in Rustiage, but we're locked into Outrage, and yes, Thunderius is really bulky, but just not bulky enough to take a stab super effective Outrage. Thunderius goes down, and all we've got to do now is beat Zwigo once again. As always, he starts off with Dust Sharp, so I lead off with Gangon and go straight for the 4x super effective Brick Break, which doesn't actually take it out, as Gangon's attack stat isn't really that good. We do survive the incoming Stone Edge with ease though, and just take it out with one more Brick Break, and next up is Talamence. I switch in TIE Factory and just go for the nasty plot, as I know he really can't do that much damage to me. He goes for the Earthquake, but it doesn't even do half, so I just go for a Flash Cannon for about half its health, as for some reason he goes for Return. He could have just done some more damage with an Earthquake, but whatever. This means I can take it out with one more Flash Cannon, and next up is Eldraine. I decide to stay in just because I want to take advantage of my boosted stats, but you can see just how bulky this thing is, as Flash Cannon doesn't even do a third. We do just survive the incoming Flamethrower though, so we do get to hit one more Flash Cannon before we go down, and he decides to lock himself into Outrage for some reason. Quake. Stalacola's up next, so I swap back into Rusty-Arge as always, and again he decides to set up a Calm Mind. C-Bomb does a solid chunk of damage as well, so we can just take a stab boosted Hydro Pump like it's nothing at all, and take it out with one more C-Bomb. We're now just down to his final Pokemon Scariados, so I just swap into Destroyer once again, and just go. That's not to say it was bad or anything, but it just wasn't quite as good as some of the previous teams. Most of the Pokemon are just mediocre at best, but I do have to say Lunark and Destroyer both were fantastic. There wasn't quite as much type diversity either this time, but still not bad at all. I hope you guys enjoyed this run. If you did, then please consider leaving a like, and comment down below with what challenge I should take on next. So obviously this is another 3-part series, which means that next time we're going to be seeing how the ground type fares. If you're new here and you don't want to miss that, then please hit subscribe, as it really means a lot for the channel. I appreciate that not everyone loves these monotype runs, so there are going to be plenty of other challenges sprinkled in as well, so hopefully there's going to be something for everyone. That's pretty much all I've got for you today, so thank you all so much for watching. Until next time.